Hello everybody and welcome back to another Pokemon Emerald video. Since I am sort of running out of Pokemons to use from the third generation, today I will have to play through the game with another often forgotten Pokemon from generation 2 this time. Misdreavus, not sure how to pronounce this thing's name, it is often forgotten about, mostly because in its original game it was locked behind the League as you were only able to find it in Mount Silver. That, combined with the not so great stats and average moveset, did not leave a great impact on the community. I have to say though that the design is pretty nice. Ghost types are sort of a mixed bag in Emerald. Some fights are very easy and some are quite hard, so overall the typing does not give a great advantage. We can abuse it for the first few fights though, since pretty much everything only knows normal moves that are not able to affect us. Now for the bad part. This Pokemon only starts with the Growl, which is not very helpful, and Psywave, maybe my least favorite move in the entire game. It is Sonic Boom, but with random damage and only 70 accuracy. And since it is a Psychic type, it does not even hit the Dark types. So for the first Poochyena, I had to struggle. Yeah, not the best start, but Misdreavus might bounce back later. By the time I reached the grunt in the forest, I was able to level up a bit more and learn Astonish. Now this is not a great move either, but at least I don't have to worry about dark types anymore, and it's also a lot more reliable than the alternative. Unfortunately, this Poochyena really likes sand attack, so I end up missing a lot of attacks. It's not dangerous, since it can't really deal any damage to me, but it's a huge waste of time. We were able to get through the starting matches without any problems, but I was not sure if Roxanne would be the same. She can deal decent damage on her own, and since Ghost is physical in this game, Astonish will be kinda weak. In the end, I had to gamble with Psywave and hope it hits for okay damage. I was able to buy a few more turns thanks to Confuse Ray. It might be my bias speaking, but I seem to have missed way more than 30% of my attacks, so much so that I might have dealt less damage to Nosepass than he did to himself in Confusion. The fight against Roxanne Ace lasts quite a while, since it can recover most of his HP with the berry and a potion that she saved for it. At some point, I even attempted to use Spite to remove all her PPs for Rock Tomb, since her only other attacking move is Tackle. Spoiler alert, it did not really work. Eventually, after many attacks, the Easter Island Stone Head finally went down, and I was able to collect the first badge of the game. From here I did the usual side quests, and then, as I was leaving, I can do the optional fight with May. Her Pokémons are a lot less tanky than the gym leaders, so the fight is not so bad. Once again, I gave her Trico since it learns Pursuit by the next encounter, and that might be a bit dangerous and challenging. And now for the good part. The next gym leader is Brawly, and he only has fighting type moves that deal damage. Since I am Ghost, these cannot hit me, so that means that I am completely invincible. Unfortunately, this fight too takes forever. They resist Astonish, so that's no good, and Psywave is not super effective since it is fixed damage. I could have skipped him and blitzed through his team later with better moves, but since there is no risk of losing, I might as well spend a couple of minutes against him for the extra XP and less hassle later. Again, the gym leader cheats by using a bunch of potions on his ace, and since this time they are super potions, that's pretty much full HP every time he uses one. I could have maybe sped it up with Confuse Ray, but I forgot about it. Now that we are done with this gym too, we can get to the next town over, where we have to stop more Team Aqua grunts. This time, the fight against them was kinda close. Once again, I cannot use Psywave, since their Carvanas are part Dark type. And the only other move I have is Astonish, which they resist. And to make things worse, Astonish is considered a contact move, so I take damage from rough skin every turn. And the cherry on top is that they know bite, so that's a lot of damage on me too. It's not an everyday occurrence of those guys bringing me down to yellow HP. Once they are finally defeated, I have to be lectured by Archie about his evil plan, like every villain ever. And now it's time for the fight against May. As mentioned previously, I was sort of expecting this one to be hard, especially because I am still rocking with pretty bad moves, but fortunately RNG was mostly on my side. I got a crit on Grovyle, which helped a lot, and from there the remaining Pokemon is Slugma, which is not exactly a threat, so that was not so bad in the end. Before the next gym, I spent some time grinding and even bought the Psychic TM. That is extremely useful, both because it's a good move and because I can finally get rid of Psywave with a decent special move on hand. The fight against Watson was doable. I equipped a Cherry Berry as usual, since I will most likely get paralyzed anyway, and then something funny happened. I also used the Thief TM because it can be very helpful in this fight. His Ace Manectric has a Citrus Berry equipped, and with the Thief you can steal it and use it for yourself. Now that's the normal interaction, but this time I was able to defeat his Ace without having to eat the berry during the fight, so I now have an early Citrus Berry. That might be a good trick to keep in mind for the future runs. Next up is the fight against Maxi on top of the volcano. Not going to lie, I was a bit worried about this fight. I cannot use Psychic against his lead, so I have to rely on Shockwave. That leaves me open to a couple of bites, but fortunately they do not deal as much damage as I was expecting. So after defeating his lead, the rest of the team is much easier since I can use Psychic, which deals quite a bit more damage, especially on Camerapt. With the leader of the Team Magma defeated, we can climb down from the volcano and face another kind of heat. Flannery is next, and she mostly uses fire types. This time I was not super worried about her. I have good special damage, and my special defense is decent. Unfortunately, she kinda puts me in my place by critting with overhit. That's not great. Fortunately for me, Torkoal fumbles the bag and just uses Sunny Day while I take it out. A bit surprised about how close it was, but it went alright in the end. Next up is our dad, Norman, the 4th gym leader. Sorry, 5th gym leader. He might seem easy at first because he uses normal Pokemons who cannot touch me, but in reality it was a bit of a mess. You see, Slacking knows Feint Attack, which is of course super effective, but the main problem is Yawn. Because without it, sure we would trade a bit of damage, but I would come out on top. Instead, with sleep, I don't know how many turns he gets to freely attack me without me being able to retaliate in any way. I tried to confuse him to boot by myself more time and hopefully let him deal a bit of damage to himself because of his massive attack stat. The one saving grace is the special defense drop from Psychic, which allowed me to take him out in 2 hits after the potions. That was the only hard part of the fight, so now we can use Surf out of combat. With it, there is a bunch more of the region to explore. Eventually, we reach the Weather Institute, where we find Aqua Admin Shelly, and sure, I cannot use Psychic because Dark types, etc, etc, but they are weak enough for Shockwave to do the trick. I do get confused and hit myself a bit and whatnot, but eventually she is defeated and we can move on from this fight. Not long after, we have to defeat May once again. Of course, her team at this point is not particularly threatening. None of them resist Psychic, so that's an easy spam. I actually have a question. Sometimes in this fight it rains and sometimes not. Does anybody know why the difference? Is it because of the day? Maybe some conditions? Anyway, next is the gym fight against Winona. For her I upgraded to Thunderbolt because of the extra power, since I don't think I need the guaranteed hit. Surprisingly, many of her Pokemons are actually neutral to electric, but today I do not have a lot to worry about, because the only thing that could be dangerous is Altaria, but since I have Levitate, I am immune to Earthquake. She could do good damage with whatever flying move she has, but she does not end up using it, so that was free, thanks. I am very glad that May gives you the Flight EM and you don't have to do other stuff to obtain it, because I always forget about it until I need to fly somewhere, and it would be a pain to backtrack to get it. Speaking about May, it's time for the last fight against her. I do not have a whole lot to say. This is more of the same really. Psychic can do quick work of her team, not extremely so I end up taking a couple of hits here and there, but nothing to worry about, and without any major issues we are done with her too. From here we can proceed to the Foggy Pokemon Cemetery and get the Magma Emblem, and then I teach Fly and fly back to the Team Magma base. Here we see Maxi waking up Groudon, of course using the wrong orb, and so he flies away, even though he can't learn that move, and Maxi attacks us. Once again, it's a question of can I deal with my Tiena, and thanks to the Thunderbolt power boost, I am able to one-shot it. From there, the rest of the team is quite easy. The only slightly annoying thing is a Camerupt, since it uses Amnesia and I have to attack him a few times before defeating him. Next is the Team Aqua base. Once again, just a whole bunch of grunts with a mini boss at the end. Once again, more Mighty Hyenas, but Thunderbolt is still enough to deal with that problem. Now it's time for the real fights, starting off with Tate and Liza. This time I have a Stab Shadow Ball, so I am almost sure that this fight will not be that hard. Especially because I can ignore Claydol when he uses Earthquake, thanks to my ability Levitate. Sure, it could use Psychic and still deal some damage, but I'll take that in exchange for defeating one of their Pokémons every turn. As I thought, Shadow Ball is a one-hit KO on everything, so this fight was quite easy for once. Now that we have the penultimate badge, it's time for the other double fight. This one is a lot more boring. Fortunately, it's not super dangerous though. There are two mighty hyenas, but again, I am not sure if they have a dark move. And unlike the previous fight, in this one we have Steven to help us out a little bit. Unfortunately, he mostly focuses on screens, at least at the start of the fight, which makes it take quite a bit longer, but it's also safer, so I guess I cannot complain too much. The first set of 3 Pokémons went down very fast, and now it's time to clean up with the second one. Even though Camerupt used Amnesia, he could not stand 2 Pokémons attacking him, and with that guy defeated, the rest of the team followed with a couple of one-shots each. As a reward for our efforts, we get the Dive HM, but unfortunately we have to immediately put it to good use and reach the seafloor cave. Here we find Archie, who of course attacks us too. At least he stopped being a coward and running away. His team has a major electric weakness, so that's an easy exploit. Of course, you know how the story of the game goes. Even though we defeated him, the red orb activates anyway, waking up Kyogre. Now, with the legendaries active, their abilities turn the weather into a mess, and have to go wake up Rayquaza so that his ability can solve all of our problems. I also have Calm Mind from the Tate and Liza fight, which is of course extremely good, one of the best moves in the game. Especially because we are a special attacker, so we can take full advantage of all of its boosts. I did not set up immediately against Juan, because his lead can confuse me and that would be annoying at the very least. Instead, I can defeat most of his Pokémon with just one attack, but then Whiscash came out. This might have been a good opportunity to set up more, mostly because I don't think he has any water moves, or maybe he has Surf. I'll have to check. Anyway, even though I only set up once, that was more than enough to deal with the rest of his team. Even with Kindra, who usually is a bit of a pain. He manages to attack first because of a Swift Swim, but no confusion, so that was nice. With all of the gym trials defeated, we can now enter the Victory Road, where we find an old friend. Wally is here for one last match, and his team is quite nice. I spend some time setting up against Altaria, because I don't think it can paralyze me or anything like that, and with the boost, the rest of his team is going to be much easier. The only thing who could have lived is Magneton, but thanks to the crit there is no way he could live. Gardevoir has a lot of special defense, but one Shadow Ball can solve that problem. Then I spent some time in the Victory Road, but once I came out on the other side, we can start the league properly. Our first match is against Sidney, and he is a bit annoying, because of course I cannot use Psychic, and my Thunderbolt is not very effective against his grass types. So I have to use Calm Mind quite a few times, but that gives him the opportunity to use more status and debuff moves on me. In the end, I get slowed down quite a lot, which is not great, but I guess it could be worse. Shift 3 also torments me, which is not great, because now I cannot sweep with Thunderbolt, but have to regularly switch to Shadow Ball, which is not very useful. In the end, this does not matter too much, since he does not take advantage of the free turns, and I can defeat him without losing once. Next is Phoebe, and she should not be too bad, but I made a mistake and used Psychic against Sableye. He used Shadow Ball and got a crit, so that was the first loss of the game. In the second attempt, I started off setting up with Calm Mind, so that Thunderbolt could deal with Sableye. But because of the extra turns, I ended up being confused, which is not great, especially because she could have used Cursed instead, and that would have been a KO for sure. Fortunately, I did not lose the 50-50, and with the extra power, I can now use Psychic and Thunderbolt to get rid of all of her Pokémons in one hit each. A bit of a sloppy play costed me the perfect run, but that's okay. Next up is Glacia, and she is a lot less dangerous. I can set up against her mostly for free. She cannot hit me with the Body Slam, so no paralysis, and sure, her ice moves do a bit of damage, but as long as I don't get frozen, everything will be alright. This time I did not jinx it, and her ice types are no match for a boosted Thunderbolt. With decent speed, I am sure that they cannot outspeed me either, so this was just a sweep once I finished setting up. After defeating the Ice Queen, it's time for the next Elite Four member. Drake is a bit scary, mostly because his Pokémons are quite tanky and quite offensive, but fortunately I don't think they have anything to deal with me, other than Crunch from Salamence. Here I did make a bit of a mistake, because I was planning on using the White Herb to remove the speed debuff, but I forgot to pick it up before entering, so that was not good. The speed drops from Rock Tomb were quite the problem actually, because it allowed two of his dragons to move before me and do quite a lot of damage. Fortunately, RNG was kind, and I did not get paralyzed or flinched, so with that I was able to defeat his team in the first attempt. Last but not least is the champion, and here I got extremely unlucky. In the first attempt I ended up losing because I got frozen by Wailord, and then I did not throw out in like 10 turns, so that's another loss. And then the second attempt happened. I got frozen again by Blizzard, but then throw out immediately, so okay, fine game, have it your way. From here I did the usual stuff, aka setting up while Wailord has low HP, so that Water Spout does not do a whole lot. This time he was a bit more smart though, because instead of using that move, he spammed Blizzard. And would you guess it? I got frozen again! Yay, how fun! Fortunately I defrosted immediately again. Yeah, this was a bit of a roller coaster of emotions. Anyway, I stopped taking any chances and straight went on the offensive. I might have not boosted too much, but it was still enough to one-shot all of his Pokémons. I only had to be careful to choose the correct move, since Whiscash is immune to electric, but it's not like he could do that much damage. Unless he got a crit, which considering the RNG was likely. Anyway, final opinion. Misdreavus as a special attacker had it kinda easy in this game. It was okay to use, the early game was a bit of a pain though, way too slow for my likings. Thank you for watching, if you enjoyed leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell, share the video, and etc. etc. If you have any feedback or comment, leave it in the comments. I'll be sure to read and answer all of them. See you next week. Bye!